right, so let me get into introductions. So we have Lisa Kleypas right here, who has published her first novel at age 21 and has published over 20 novels since. She has won the RITA Award along with many others. And tonight she will talk about her newest book, Hello Strangers, which is her fourth book in her Ravenals series. Next to her, we have Beverly Jenkins, who has published her first book in 1994 and has become a trailblazer for multicultural romance. She has won numerous awards, such as the NAACP Award and the 2017 Romance Writers of America, Nora Roberts Lifetime Achievement Award. And tonight go ahead and do a clap. She is here tonight to discuss her latest novel, The Tempest. All right, and then we have Eloisa James, who has also... Eloisa James, I'm sorry, who has written over 26 novels while also teaching English literature. So she has also won a RITA Award in 2013 and has been nominated over 10 times as well. So tonight she will be discussing Wild in Love. This is the beginning of her new series, The Wilds of Linlow Castle. And last but not least, we have Mia Sosa, who is a contemporary romance writer and has practiced law for over 10 years before trading in her suits for loungewear. That sounds like a dream come true to me. She was a 2015 Writers of America Golden Heart finalist, and she will discuss her book. Where is it? I'm sorry, I have a lot written down here. She is discussing Acting on Impulse, which is the first book in her Love on Cue series, which has a follow-up novel. The second novel will come out in April, which is called Pretending He's Mine. So if you want to go pre-order that, you can do that as well. And tonight's moderator is Petra Maier, who is an editor at NPR Books, who focuses on genre fiction, and she loves romance. That is why she is here tonight. Her favorite romance novel is Warrior's Woman by Johanna Lindsey.
Best cover ever.
All right, so give them a hand and we'll start our panel.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much for coming out tonight. We have an amazing group of writers here. Mia, you're the only contemporary. I hope we won't feel ganged up on.
Well, Lisa's done a few contemporaries.
True. Sorry, my bad. I think we should just start off as promised with tell us. We'll go down the line. And you guys tell us about your new books.
Okay. No, you first. You first.
Sorry. Okay. So if you could give me just a couple of seconds to kind of freak out here, because I am on a panel with Lisa Kleypas, Beverly Jenkins, and Eloisa James. So
I'm with you. I'm with you, honestly.
Now that I've gotten that out of the way, I think I can speak coherently about my book. So Acting on Impulse is the first book in my Love on Cue series. It's my first book with Avon, and I'm really excited about it and really excited about the follow-up, Pretending He's Mine. But Acting on Impulse is the love story between Tori Alvarez, a personal trainer. I'm trying not to curse here. And a television actor who's on the rise and is looking for his big break. And in connection with trying to get his big break, he gets a role and loses a substantial amount of weight, grows a beard for this role, and is basically not recognizable. And he describes himself as the fourth and forgotten member of ZZ Top. And they meet on a plane. She doesn't know who he is, and she's actually on the plane because she is escaping from the wounds inflicted by her boyfriend, who was a media-hungry guy, and wanted to be in the limelight, and she's done with it. So, of course, she meets this person, thinks he's this totally cool, nice, down-to-earth guy, and later learns that he is a Hollywood actor who is about to get his big break, and she wants nothing to do with him. And their love story is basically how they come together and figure out how they're going to make this relationship work.
That sounds like so much fun.
It really is.
I'm going to hook mine right onto hers because mine is called Wild in Love. And I was really, when it's historicals, you know, you're thinking both of the past and the present always. And one thing that really fascinated me that I found out was that the Georgians had the beginning of what we call celebrity culture. They learned how to reproduce an etching, and they learned how to reproduce it cheap. So they sent them all over England on peddlers' cards. And so everyone started collecting, you know, your favorite guy for the first time, like the duchesses and the milkmaids. Everyone's collecting the same men, basically. These men were very popular. Who knew? But they also collected women. They collected all kinds of satirical things. And so I have a big family. They live on the edge of a bog. I got sick of London ballrooms, you know, after 26 books or whatever. And so they're in Cheshire, and one of the guys, Alaric, is an explorer. And basically, he sells kind of the way I did when I was little, like young. My parents bought the book. My family bought the book. And not that many other people. And so he'd go out and go to China, write a book, come back, and, you know, meet the Explorers Club, talk to 16 people. It's great. It's a perfect life. He goes back out. He goes to, you know, America. He goes to wherever he goes. And then he's flying back in. He's coming back in the boat. And they're drawing up into the London harbor, and the captain's like, "What is that?" And as far as they can see, there are women, just like women, with parasols and hats and colors bobbing up and down. And he's like, "Wow, they must think there's a prince in the boat, you know?" And he's making jokes. And then the guy comes over, and he's like, "It's you. You're really here." And he's like, "What?" And not only has he become unbelievably famous in his absence, but there is a play running, now think about Hamilton, right? Called Wild in Love, which is about him falling in love with a woman in Africa who gets eaten by the cannibals. It's a tragedy, and everyone is desperately in love with him, and there are pictures of him all the way across England, wrestling kraken, climbing mountains, wrestling cannibals. He's never been to Africa, but never mind. And that's where it starts, because my heroine wants nothing to do with him. Like, who would want him? He can't. His house can't even keep the bricks in it. People are running up and stealing the bricks, selling them on the London street. So no.
I didn't think you were going to be able to do it, but you did it.
It's great minds think alike. Yeah. Try to match that, Bev.
I'm trying. I don't know if I can. Okay, well, adventure. Weak, but okay. Girlfriend got jokes. Adventure. Tempest is the third book in what Avon calls the Old West series. And when you do Old West, you gotta have boots. So I got my boots on. Reagan is the niece of Edie and Ryan from the first book, Forbidden. Second book is Breathless, which stars her sister Portia. And then we have Reagan, who's looking for love, but also looking for adventure. So she answers an ad to become a mail order bride, because why not, right?
Like you do.
Plenty of adventure in that. So she goes, and if you've read the first part of the book, or if you have not, she's pretty good with a gun because she's raised in Arizona territory. Everybody needs to know how to shoot. The stagecoach that she's on is attacked. She shoots, kills a couple people. Stagecoach goes on. Stagecoach is set upon again by another group. She thinks, okay, these are the same guys. Let me start shooting again. Well, it's not. It's the sheriff and his boys. And one of the guys that she shoots is the guy she's coming to marry.
That's a meet cute for the ages.
Good.
Yeah. Oops, I shot ya.
Talk about adventure. So that's the story. And he has no intentions of loving her. All he wants is someone to raise his daughter. So how are they going to, one, get past this shooting? And number two, how is she going to affect his heart? Because he buried his heart with his with his dead wife. So it's a great story. Lisa's turn.
It sounds great. It sounds great.
It really is good.
Okay, well, sometimes when you're writing, a minor character will just leap out of your imagination fully formed. And I don't know why. I wish I knew what for sure would make it happen so it could always happen, but you're just lucky when it does. So one of the best pieces of advice I ever got, for writing was from Jennifer Cruzy, who during a talk said, every character in the story thinks that they're the star of the story, and never forget that. So she said the pizza delivery guy, who may be on for, a paragraph in the entire book, thinks he's the star. So be aware, he just broke up with his girlfriend, he's always wanted to have his teeth fixed. So knowing these things really, I added the thing about the teeth, actually. but so knowing this, just with you knowing this as the author, helps to kind of give you this dialogue and these ideas that kind of give life to a minor character. So that's, the preparation for this. So when I was writing Marrying Winterbourne a couple of historical books ago, the hero happened to get hurt. There was a collapsing building. His shoulder got dislocated. So, I wanted to just, conveniently have a doctor, somewhere on the scene of this building demolition. And so I was just about to do it. And I thought, yeah, white whiskers, older guy, black coat. And then I thought, what if this minor character, this doctor, were a woman in 1876, 77, I think it was 1876, England? And I was interested, and I thought, well, that's a really good way to make this character interesting. So I started looking up all about female physicians back then. There was only one in all of England. It turns out there was a real-life woman. Her name was Dr. Elizabeth Garrett Anderson, and she had always wanted to be a doctor, just because she didn't have any doctors in her family. And it was impossible. You could not get a medical degree in England because they wouldn't let you go to school, wouldn't let you go to college. And girls' education was so bad at that point. They taught you, sewing and stuff, which is nice, but it's not like algebra, So anyway, she was so determined that she learned French, went to the Sorbonne in France to study medicine there, earned a degree there because they allowed her there, and then she came back to England and wanted to become a certified physician so that she could practice surgery and be a doctor in England, and they would not let her. No one would give her the test. Now, the test could be administered by 12 different types of medical societies, like, apothecaries or special kinds of surgeons, and no one would, but the apothecaries had some weird loophole in their rules where they couldn't say no to her, and she found out about this. So she took that test. They could not refuse her, and she passed it, and they were forced to give her medical certification. And as soon as she did that and became the first legal medical surgeon, physician in England, they closed that loophole, and no woman was admitted to the British Medical Association for the next 20 years. She was the only one. So, phenomenal woman. So when I read about this, I thought, that is extraordinary. What a woman she must have been. What a personality she must have had. And I thought, she's going to inspire this minor character who's walked on the scene. And so that will make this scene really vivid, and then that will be the end of it. So she was in that scene, and it just caught fire in my imagination. It was just so exciting that I brought her in again later in the book. And someone got a migraine, so yeah. And then after that, I really had no plans for her. But in the next book, someone got shot. It turned out lots of people in my books get hurt. So I kept bringing her on, and then I thought, oh, I must make her a heroine, because that will just be so exciting. And I've already done all this research, so it won't be a problem. So when I decided to make her the heroine of Hello Stranger, it was amazing, because you can't do things like have a character bleeding out without learning about how to do blood transfusion, which was very tricky back then because they didn't know about blood types. So it was almost like Russian roulette, if you got lucky enough to get the right donor, that was it. So I had this strong, educated, individual, unique woman, and I thought, I have to give her a powerful hero to match her. And it turned out I had another minor character in the series who I had implied was sort of a secret government agent, And so, thanks to some suggestions from my Facebook readers, I named him Ethan Ransom, and I had him uncover a government conspiracy before the story just starts. So Ethan knows as soon as he reveals this conspiracy, because he's one of these 8 secret agent James Bond precursors that actually did exist back then, that he knows he probably doesn't have long to live. They're going to take him out as soon as he does this. And so at this moment, he meets Garrett. Now, he knows about her. He's met her briefly in a previous book, and he was so fascinated by her that, unbeknownst to her, for 2 years, he's been sort of her guardian angel, looking out for her when she goes on her dangerous, rounds in London, going to visit workhouses and things like that. But then one night, she is approached by 3 drunken soldiers, and they clearly are going to do terrible things to her. And I decided, if you have a female doctor who's going to be going around London by herself at night, she's got to be kind of a badass who knows how to defend herself. So I made her an expert in the Victorian art of cane fighting. So she immediately gets her cane out, whap, 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 takes care of one of them, distracts them by flinging a surgical knife at one of them. She is whirling around doing all these amazing things. She turns around to take on the other 2, and they're already on the ground. And she's like, what? They're passed out on the ground. They're all beaten up, like within a matter of seconds. And she's like, who did this? What happened? And then she realizes someone else is on the scene. So she's like, come out, whoever you are. I know you're out there. And this man materializes out of the shadows. And so that, of course, is Ethan. And now that they've met in this way, he just can't stay away from it. And he's always like, I've got to go. I can't be with you anymore. I'm about to die. Yep, no, I got to go. I'm going to die. And they keep meeting each other. So that's the setup for the story. And I don't want to, there's so many spoilers. It turned out to be just a roller coaster of a book for me. Difficult, exciting, I think more deeply emotional and romantic, because he's half Irish, and I researched all this beautiful Irish poetry of the time to give him these turns of phrase like, your shadow on the ground is sunlight to me, things like that. So that's the way he speaks, and it's really fun. Yeah, so
Very good.
Like all the cops we know, right?
Ooh. I wasn't thinking about that. I was thinking about the fact that he has black hair and blue eyes.
No. So there's Hello Stranger, and I hope if you can or you'd like to, you'd buy it and find out what happens. Yes.
Can we just note that Lisa Kleypas said badass before I did?
I think we can make a house rule that badass is acceptable, since we are all badasses. So there's one thing that I have noticed that binds all these books together. We're talking about violence and government conspiracies and celebrity culture, and it all feels sort of topical. And my jam is genre fiction, and usually when I'm explaining or trying to, not justify, because I'm not justifying anything, but when I am trying to evangelize about genre fiction to people, I say, science fiction and fantasy are ways that writers can deal with issues of the day through a lens that provides a safer move. It's a really interesting way to talk about things that are important right now. But I feel like romance is really stepping up to the plate right now. And one thing that really binds all of your books together for me is that they all feature heroines who enthusiastically consent to whatever's going on. I think at one point in Hello Stranger, Garrett says, "Kiss me or I'll break your nose," which is about as enthusiastic as you can get. Were those conscious choices? Jump in, anyone.
I just talked, so someone else start. Yeah.
I think romance is, at least modern day romance, we won't talk about the rapey 70s, has always been about consent. Women who have agency over their own sexuality, women who decide, yes, we can do it, or no, we can't do it. And I think it empowers women. I think we're about consent. I mean, yeah.
I just want to put in the academic thing here.
Okay, good.
Because I get a lot of young feminist academics writing me just about the rapey culture.
Right.
The pill had come in. There was a lot of fear, a lot of pressure on women. Go out there and enjoy it. Yeah, you're supposed to be like really enjoying this. You're supposed to be having sex now. You're free. Go out there and have lots of sex. And the rape culture is not good looking back at it, but if you look at it in historical form point, that really was a lot of women going, I can't handle this freaking pressure. Oh, someone tied me to the bed. And guess what? I'm having an orgasm. I never knew what this was before.
It's true.
I think we should be, well, I'm all about being kind, because also to those readers, because man, I learned a lot from those books early on the bus, the school bus. I learned everything. But I also feel like those books were dealing with the problem of that, the sex problems of those moments, right? And I have to say, this is a baby here, 4 books. But the rest of us have been around a long time and written a lot of books. And so what happens is, you decide, I haven't done a kidnapping in a long time, and it's time for a kidnapping. This happened to me time before, and I was like, wait a second. Because kidnappings have changed. We have to hit the fantasy, right? We have to hit that fantasy fun, someone's taking you away. They're not saying, do you want to go for the weekend? But we're just hanging out. We're just hooking up. We're not doing anything here. This is nothing serious, and I might, ghost you next week. Even though you have to hit the fantasy of you're going to do that and it's going to be great. At the same time, you got to end in consent. And I have to say, I found myself rethinking it. It was like, I'm kidnapping you, I'm taking you away from London. And she's like, what? And he's like, well, unless you don't want to. Fine, I'll go.
Or you can switch it up, and I had the heroine kidnap the.
Yeah, there you go too. You
kidnap the
you
guy
still get the kidnap, but
stole his boat. So.
But I was actually thinking about that as I was preparing for this panel, that you can kind of draw a parallel between the original actual bodice rippers and the consent is hot movement of today, because they're both about legitimizing and centering female desire, right? Back then, according to the strictures of the day, that was a way women could enjoy themselves. Now we've moved on a little bit.
Yeah, I think we're at a time where we're really blending feminism and fantasy in an interesting way where, we have to all, I mean, not just us, but society has to understand that a fiction novel is not a guide to life, as Alicia was pointing out last night, just because a man will watch a James Bond movie doesn't mean he can jump out of a helicopter or even wants to. And so it's important to recognize that, things can happen in fiction books that we like to enjoy vicariously, that we don't necessarily want to happen to us, but it's just it stirs our imagination. It sets sparks to our imagination. And so, I really strongly believe that women are entitled to our fantasies without people looking at us and saying, well, you can't tell the difference between fantasy and reality. We're allowed to fantasize about being ice skaters or about being kidnapped or about being a princess. I wouldn't want to be a princess in real life, although I would like the crown. But I'm just saying that it's ridiculous to me that people seem to have this mistaken idea that women can't tell the difference between fantasy and reality, or that reading romance novels will make your husband less attractive to you. In fact, the reverse is true. Romance readers tend to have much better relationships with their husbands and spicier love lives because of it. So, it's I don't feel that men get this this accusation that they can't tell fantasy from reality. Yeah.
As we talked about last night, all of the Arnold books. Arnold never died. Men were wonderful with whatever Arnold was doing. Mm-hmm. And they were allowed to do that.
Yeah.
Whereas women, you're reading romance and they're like, oh, you poor deluded thing.
Yeah.
And your husband, he must be, no.
Yes.
You guys are smart enough. You know this is fiction. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But romance novels are empowering. We want you to be able to tell the difference between a bad relationship.
Yes.
And a good relationship.
Exactly.
Exactly. There's nothing wrong with wanting communication. Mm-hmm. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be treated like a human being. Mm-hmm. There's nothing wrong with an HEA.
Mm-hmm. Well, when you were asking about being purposeful about it, and I think, at least in my experience, because I am a new writer, I am thinking about this more and more. And one of the dangers that I see is that when you're writing, you... and at least in my books, when I have both the hero and the heroine's point of view, I know that they both want each other. That couple doesn't necessarily have those cues. So it's very important to me now to take that step back and go, okay, what does he know about what cues she's giving to him, and what does she know about the cues that she's giving off? Because for the romance to work, in my mind, they have to communicate. They have to fall in love. It's not the stuff that the reader necessarily reads or is in the reader's point of view. It's what do they see in each other through the eyes and words of the author. And so that is an additional step that I've been taking.
And it sounds almost so nutritious to say this, but I feel like, especially I noticed this with your book, that romance can model healthy relationships, because I learned a lot from watching Tori and Carter. I kept wanting to say Mason. Mason's her ex. Sorry. Yes. Tori and Carter talk to each other and thinking, I could stand up to a dude like that.
Right.
Yeah, and I think authors, you do, as you develop your readership kind of learns what to expect from you. They know they're safe within certain boundaries, and I think different authors have different boundaries as far as what they'll do. So, that's why there's all different authors, and it's
I just want to add something about desire, though, because I feel like one of the reasons we get this lashback is because our culture has sort of an ickiness surrounding women's desire, right? Women's erotic. You're going to read that book, you're going to become aroused. Ooh, ew, right?
Yeah. What's wrong with that?
And frankly, desire is not all that PC. And I think those two things have hooked together. Maybe through a conjunction that came slightly through 50 Shades of Grey, when they're like, oh, that's kind of gross. But you got guys out there getting aroused 9,000 different ways, and no one's going, that's gross. It's something tied to women's desire. And then we got to own that. Desire is not PC. It just isn't. I mean,
not for women.
Not for women.
That's true. And one of the most
well, I don't think for men either.
one of the most common dismissive things they say about romance novels is, oh, that's housewife porn, which is
yes.
Yes.
I hate that. Exactly.
Hate that. We are allowed to desire.
Yes.
Say it louder.
We're allowed to desire.
Right. It's this notion.
We are allowed to be aroused.
Anything more? What else?
No.
We're allowed to be ravaged.
Well, you have a readership that wants to be ravaged.
That's okay.
And that's okay. So, yeah, go ahead.
I think part of it, when you were talking about this notion of, the housewife, or, the person who can't really own their desire, I think that part of it is there's this sense that it's the snowball effect, right? If women start demanding equality and demanding what they want and showing their desires and asking for more in the bedroom, oh my goodness, it's going to go outside the bedroom, and we don't want any of that. It's and I think romance empowers us in that way to say, no, there is no place, whether it is inside the home, outside the home, where we can't ask for what we want. Right. And a lot of people miss that.
Yeah. Well, when you study from a historical perspective, how women's desire was regarded, I mean, women were praised for their ignorance in matters of the bedroom. I mean, girls were especially virtuous and praised if they knew nothing at all, and that on their wedding night, they're introduced to the experience with pain, confusion. I have a part in this book that came out today where Garrett, my doctor heroine, and her partner, an older male doctor, are discussing this issue about women being able to talk about their own physical problems to a doctor, and I had him remark that he had to have a doll in his office where women who were so delicately bred or modest or just wanting to be good couldn't talk about body parts or say certain words, so they would point to areas on the doll. It hurts here. It hurts. And some doctors of the time, the more old-fashioned ones, would do a gynecological exam or something without ever looking at the woman. They would look away, and they would have a cloth and my good, so no wonder so many women had problems and died in childbirth. I mean, if you can't even, yes.
And that was one of the issues with my hero and the heroine. Because he's like, well, what do you mean women have needs?
I wanted to punch him.
Yeah. And she says, and you call yourself a doctor? But yeah, women weren't supposed to have needs. I mean, and if you think about it historically, very few couples saw each other nude in the 19th century. You know, you couldn't be naked running around the house with him chasing you. Not allowed. You know, it was like throw up the dress, open the legs, and that was it. Unless he was with a woman of ill repute. You know, you're not supposed to bring that into the bedroom. So with Reagan, she's like, no, you know, we're going to take this dress off because I don't want it ruined. And he's like, what are you talking about? And she's like, no, we're going to do this right. So, yeah.
I'm just going to add that, you know, this is an economic issue, right? We were talking about slavery on the train, and that's an economic issue, among other things, but partly. But this was also an economic issue. I'm a Shakespeare scholar, so you're chaste, silent, and obedient because you are an object that belongs to a man. It's going to be a transfer of power. And if you're not chaste, your first child may not be the child of the man who you were sold to essentially with your dowry, right? That's a huge economic transgression then. It's just straightforward. And if you learn how to desire and you're like, this guy's useless, you might go outside the house and then boom, he's got a cuckoo as an heir because he actually sucks in bed.
Right.
That's a huge fear, right? It's all about property. It's about transfer of property.
Yes.
So I think it's really weird that has carried forward now to the extent to which it has carried forward. Because
It shows you how deep and pervasive it was that it's still sort of seething there a little bit, you know? Yeah.
But you couldn't own property.
No.
You know, couldn't own property. You could be owned, like you said. Couldn't own property, and if you did, then it would go to your husband, just like your bank account. You have a lot of instances, you know, in the United States in the 19th century where women couldn't have bank accounts. So it's all about the power, and now here we are, you know, with romance novels where women are saying, let's change the tune. You know, not only in the bedroom, but outside the bedroom. And that scares the hell out of a lot of people. Women, too. So, but we don't care.
Well, no,
We are writing and we are reading romance.
no, I think that's how things change, though. Things change through fiction, through Hollywood, through publishing, through acts of imagination that then just gently bring people along until reality can follow these dreams and this imagination. You know, Black Panther movie is like that. I think it's going to help to, you know, really change things in a beautiful way. Yeah.
Wakanda forever.
Wakanda forever.
everybody's going to look like the people in those movies. Gorgeous.
I know.
All right, Petra, what you got?
Oh my God, how can I follow this? I know, but you kind of went into what I was going to ask, which was, you know, another knock on romance is that it's escapism, right? That you're just drifting off into a fantasy world. But I think we've established that romance has a role to play in the world today. Mm-hmm. Are you changing what you write at all because of current events, changing the way you write your heroes, for example? Like the old sort of domineering alpha hero, the slab of muscle, you know, my way or the highway guy. Like, does he fly today? How do you?
You know, somebody said that, you know, if you took the alpha holes from, you know, the 70s and the 80s.
We can also say alpha holes. This is true.
Yeah, I did say alpha holes. And brought them to the 21st century with these heroines. That she just kick his ass, you know, because it, you know, just an alpha hole. So I have always written heroes who are supportive, you know, except for this guy here, this new guy. I mean, he
gets there in the end. Otherwise,
yeah. I mean, it's like, really.
I know every time he said "good women," I was like, I don't like you.
I know. Yeah. He was kind of hard to snuggle up against. Anyway, I forgot where we are, so I'm.
But I think what's interesting though is that the more that I've been able to research, about actual people who lived back then and read, periodicals and books that were written back then, you realize our stereotypes of the prim little Victorian woman, all bound up, and then the big domineering men. Yes, there were many people like that, and that was a cultural value. The idealized woman, trapped in the home. But there were women like Dr. Elizabeth Garrett Anderson, and there were other women who were really blazing trails and doing these incredible things and paying the price. I mean, really making sacrifices. And there were tremendously supportive men at the time. One thing that surprised me was in the last book, Devil in Spring, when I was researching property rights for women and laws and things like that, such as the fact that if you did not say the word obey during your marriage ceremony, it was not a legal marriage. I mean, you were not married.
Yes.
And so it surprised me to learn that Queen Victoria was very much against women's suffrage, whereas she had a couple of prime ministers who were underneath. They couldn't be too open about it, but they were trying to push her, saying, well, let's let some women have some more rights and eventually work towards the right to vote. And yet here's a woman who I'm sorry, I love the TV series and all that, but she betrayed other women by keeping them down. It was like, well, it's okay for me to have all the power, but I don't want any other woman to. So yeah, it's but there were all kinds of people with all kinds of belief back then, and so we tend to just narrow it down to men were all this way and women were all that way, and it's
Mia, I feel like you've been left out because we've been talking about historical stuff, but in your book you did create a situation where there's a definite power imbalance between the hero and the heroine, and they have to negotiate that. Was that a conscious choice?
Yes. I think I skipped over this in explaining the book, but Tori is a personal trainer, and ultimately, through some shenanigans of his own, Carter, the hero, hires her to train him and to basically get him back in shape. And that is how they spend most of the latter half of the book. And there are some real issues on her part about navigating what is essentially a client trainer relationship. And there are many parts where I wanted to be clear that although they were attracted to each other, they were not going to go anywhere in this relationship until that had resolved. And that's one of those things that doesn't often happen in books. There is the heroine starts out worried about this working relationship, and then it goes away. And I'm not really sure what happens to that line. But in this instance, I wanted to be very clear that she wasn't going to go anywhere with this relationship until they had resolved that. And that's when they, felt comfortable to move on with their relationship seriously. Not that there wasn't, a couple of things before that, but nothing, that was, we are really going to be together. And I think that was important. And it was important for him also. There's a moment when he's thinking about her and is obviously attracted to her, and she's doing her job. And he pulls back and says, basically, I'm being a douche right now. And I shouldn't be thinking about her in this way when I trained her for this purpose. And it was important for me to have those kinds of dynamics because when I put books out, I want people to read them, and I want women, to sort of see that and see an ideal and know that that's what you should expect, because that's kind of what I want to expect from the people in my life. And so it was important for me to do that.
How are we on time? Is it time to go for questions or? Okay. Great. Okay. The mic is right here. If you have questions for these wonderful women.
Step up to the mic.
Come on. Come on.
No question. There's nothing we have not answered before. Don't be shy.
You've had long careers, many of you, and good careers, and lots of expectations. With all of those expectations on you as a writer, as a bestseller, as sitting with these people, how do you still sit down every day and make sure you write the words that are true to you?
Just by doing it. I mean, I could not I couldn't ask for a better life. To be able to tell the stories that are inside of me. And as I said last night, to be able to tell stories of women of color. Because if I don't do it, who's going to do it? And I know that you guys are expecting these great books. I mean, you're always saying, Lisa, Bev, Eloisa, Mia, you're not writing fast enough, so I got you guys looking in on me while I'm, sitting on my bed in my pajamas, going, write faster, write faster, write faster. So, but we love what we do.
I don't know if you're right or not, I think it's really important to let yourself write crap. To know, like, oh, this is so bad. What I'm writing today, if anyone saw this, like if I died going to pick up my kid, I'd be so humiliated because someone would see this. You just have to take a deep breath and say, it doesn't matter. I'm going to make my page count no matter what. Because on the last page, if your page count, something interesting might happen. But if you don't treat it like a professional, I got to go there and I got to screw on the toothpaste every day, it's not going to happen for you long term. You can't sit around and wait for the muse to hit. Mine, in the book that I'm finishing right now, which is the third Wild book, my editor called me up and she was like, well, I really like it. They always say that, right? I really like it. It's really great. And then she was like, do you think the book starts around page 145? She's so nice. We have the same editor. She doesn't say, like, it's total shit until 145. She says, do you think it starts? So you have to be able to take the knocks, because better to take it from your editor and from your friends and from anyone else you can talk into reading it than let your readers down. If you want a career, you've got to constantly be changing and thinking and growing. And what worked for us in historical 25 years ago, a lovely digressive discussion of a dress, that's not working anymore. It's not.
I still kind of do that with dresses, though. Sometimes
I got it down to a page, though.
I know. It's true. No, and you're right, of course. I mean, I still love the detail. I would put more details if I could, but everyone's like, no, that slows the story down. Yeah. But I think it's good to scare yourself. I think no matter what your profession is, it's good to frighten yourself by trying something a little hard, a little different, and wading into slightly unknown territory, because you could fail, you could do it badly, you could make a mistake, and then, as we all know, then it's out there forever. But
that's just hard work.
But if you don't do that, you don't stay fresh, and then all of a sudden you're doing the same old thing, and everyone's bored with you, and then your career just sort of fades. So I think we've all scared ourselves a lot, haven't we?
I would say we've all known a lot of people. When I came to my first dinner, it was the first big dinner at Bantam Dell, which doesn't even exist. It was Delacorte. Everybody there was like so famous, and cool, and none of them are left.
Yeah.
I just leave you with that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
Directed to Beverly. Me and my mom just finished Tempest. What's next? I was hoping.
Oh, God.
I was hoping.
Everybody wants spring now.
Wait. But I do. I've been talking to her, and she's like, why don't you send her a letter? 2 Chefs July.
Oh, God.
It never.
Okay. 2 Chefs dies alone in the hills of Arizona.
Okay. All right.
I have, on my Facebook page, we have a 2 Chefs support group. Because of ladies like you who really, really want this book, and I'm not gonna write.
He done. I'm like, wait, y'all can't work together.
He doesn't want a book.
He don't want a book.
He doesn't want a book. I'm sorry.
I have to say,
So what's next is I'm trying to finish the Ninth Blessing series.
Okay.
Ninth Blessing book, and then I just signed another contract for 3 more historicals.
Yay.
yes.
So I don't know what they're going to be, and I don't know if it's going to be spring. Everybody, everywhere I go, people are like, is spring going to get the book? Is spring? I don't know.
I'm even tired of hearing about it.
And we didn't start hanging out till this weekend. Everywhere I go. So I'm going to try and give you good books. That's all I can say.
I've loved them. I started with Vivid.
Okay.
I haven't gone in order. My mom was like, I think you're old enough to read this now. I'm like, all right, well, what you didn't know, I was sneaking reading them.
Thank you for the support all these years.
Yeah, I just, like, when I read these stories, at one time, our washing machine's broken right now.
Right.
So I had a load in the wash, and I took it out, and I took it upstairs to the bathtub, and I was washing, and I was like, you know who I feel like? I feel like Jesse. I feel like Vivid.
Yeah.
I was like, and I just like, I love these books. I'm like, these are my people.
Yeah.
And I'm like, just looking like, what would they think of the world now? And we got cars.
Right.
Once you plug in the wall,
Yeah.
I'm like, what?
I
can only
know, babe.
imagine. But just keep it up. It's great.
I love you.
them.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, this is mostly directed to the historical authors, but sorry. I also have a master's in English literature, so I'm pretty familiar with the blessings of the library and the internet. So my question to you all is, the gems of your books are, for me at least, all of the detail, particularly with yours, Miss Jenkins. It's the detail, the level of microscope work that you do is really extraordinary. So I'm wondering, what are some of the specific resources that you all go to for these books? And if there is time, if there's a favorite fact that you found while researching any of your works, share with the class, please.
All right, I'll start. I go for the source, right? So I work in a university. I'm surrounded by people writing about things. So I go to lectures because I've got a lot of ideas at lectures. Because somebody's up there, they're really excited about the first woman who wrote the first waltz, and then you can turn her into a heroine. But if you go and read a history book, I find that it influences you. Whereas if you go online and you go onto Google Books and you write in, I want the London Times from 1780, and you just start looking, you can get it through the university, you can get it anywhere, Google Books, you can go for a book of that year that's talking about scarlet fever. Forget what people are saying about it now, you want what they thought about it then. Right. And you got the voice, you have what it feels like, right? And I would say the most interesting fact I've come up with lately is when I was in a museum, because I go to museums, right? I'm hauling my teenage daughter with me, she's being a pain in the ass, won't get her hand out of the phone, and I'm making this ridiculously lively conversation with the docent, like trying to intrigue her, which is failing absolutely. And I'm like, what about that pineapple? What's that pineapple doing there? Anna, look at this, there's a pineapple. She's like, ugh. Anyway, that pineapple was rented because in the Georgian period, pineapples were so popular that you would rent one for your dinner party. It would go from dinner party to dinner party. I was fascinated by that. So that's my first American heroine, because I was sitting there in this room. She's explaining that a pineapple costs equivalent, some of them, of $5,000. Wow. So what if you were an American heroine? Because they had pineapples over here, right? They would come in the hold and you would put them out on your porch. They were still expensive. They indicated hospitality. There's a different feeling about them. But they had them. So my American heroine comes over to England. There's a big, long dinner party. There's huge piles of fruit, and they would put the pineapple on top, and the footman comes around and says to the grooms, what would you like? And she says, I'd like a slice of pineapple. And there's like this little silence, and then everyone at the end of the table goes, I want pineapple. The hostess up at the front doesn't even see it till it's too late. Yeah. Thing is cut up. $10,000 later. Yeah. Yeah. So that's the kind of detail you're praying for, because I was telling Bev in the train, I learned most of my American history from her because I grew up on a farm in Minnesota, and we did World War I and World War II, and then we kind of just evaporated. That was it. We went to Romeo and Juliet. So that's great, but when you're writing a book, a romance, one thing that she never forgets is that the details are one thing, but the story at the heart, it's the people that you carry away, right? The details are just the wallpaper. You want to carry these people. You want people up there going, where's Spring's story? I got to have it.
Mm-hmm. Biblic's in the back of mine, so, you just look in the back of the book. Tells you everything. I make it real easy.
I would definitely say Google Books. I consult it all the time, and I'll give you two quick examples. One was that when I was researching what the opinions of the day were from the sources of the time on women's education, I wanted to find out what the reactions of family and friends might have been when Garrett, as a girl, wanted to study boys' subjects, math, Greek, Latin, all those things. And so there was a leading educator. I cannot remember his name right now, but I mean, he was the expert on children's education back then in England. And he wrote this very detailed book on how if you allowed girls to study math and science and things like that, the shock to her tender brain would be so terrible that her children would be born with deformities and mental problems, and so would their children. So, I mean, that was the resistance to girls being educated. Another thing that I found out was that back in the 1820s, before it became illegal to publish information that women might read about contraception, there were several books and pamphlets by several, I mean at least 4 or 5 that I could find with a quick search that had this kind of information. And one of them was that a very effective method of contraception was to take a little silk sponge, soak it in lemon juice, and use it like, the sponges we have today. And I was like, so back then guys were sponge worthy or not. You know what I mean? It was like, it was amazing. But who knew? Who knew,
I use sponges a lot in my book.
I just wanted to add, I think there is this conception that contemporary romance authors don't research, but we actually do.
Yes, that's true. It's very true. Yes.
Yes. I will just share with you one fact that I learned while I was researching acting on impulse, which is that there is an insect, and it is called the Tuberous bush cricket, and its balls weigh 15% of its body. Okay?
It's balls?
Yes.
That is a
15% of its body weight. And I use it in the book, and you'll have to read why I do. Okay.
I'm so reading this book. I'm going to be reading this
Don't
book.
let it be said that contemporary romance authors don't research their books.
Thank you.
You just need to say that at the beginning, and you will sell 1 million books, because now I got to find out. Yeah.
Hello. First of all, I just want to say thank you to all of you ladies for your contributions to this community. Obviously, we all feel very strongly about about reading your work, and it's important to a lot of women in a lot of different areas of the world, not just this country. So thank you. I want to start with that. But you all have touched on female agency and kind of ownership of your body and your sexuality. And there are, of course, different nuances to that, specifically in the United States. And Ms. Jenkins, when you're dealing with your characters who are usually women of color, who are always women of color, there's a specific there was an insidious deprivation of our agency.
Right, yeah.
Right? And so when you're treating the type of characters like Reagan, who are otherwise well-raised women, who are very clear about the fact that they would like to have some sort of sexual agency, like what are the biggest challenges you deal in kind of sculpting those characters? Speaking of Reagan, and then also of her aunt Edie, who finds herself in a compromising situation with a man she believes is white, which makes, which adds a different nuance to that situation.
Having your own agency within your own community is not an issue as much as trying to have that outside of the community, which is why Edie was having such an issue. But she still stuck to herself. I mean, when he said, I want to take you out, and she said, is your fiance coming? So he was dealing with her as if all she wanted to do was fall at his feet.
Right.
And I don't know if that had anything to do with race, or it's just him being an alcoholic. Okay. So I try and make my women as real as I can. And within themselves, they have no issue as to who they are and holding on to their agencies for themselves. It's just when the outside community decides something different, that you have something different.
Right.
So I don't know if that answers your question
It
or
does.
not.
It does. It's helpful.
Okay.
Thank you. And I just have one more question on the Bring on the Blessing series.
Yeah.
You also had done several contemporary romance novels.
Right.
Do you intend to explore contemporary romance outside of the
I'd
Blessing
love to be
series?
able to go back to that. I love blowing stuff up. You know, I love contracts. But I'm trying to finish the stuff that pays the mortgage.
Thank you.
So keep me in mind. I ain't forgot you.
Hi, I'm having a fangirl moment right now. But so one of the favorite things that I've always loved when I snuck romance books as a way too young girl was the sex, right? The banter's great, and here I am. I'm the daughter of immigrant families. We didn't talk about sex. My sex talk was don't get pregnant. They didn't tell you how, but you weren't supposed to do it. So now that I'm older and I've been reading, romances for so long, I love that the sex empowers and give women agency. That's the theme tonight. And so much that I write about this on my blog. I take romance books and I pair them with sex toys. So I'm curious I've only done it with contemporaries. I do. We can talk.
My daughter says pure romance.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's like wine, but much more exciting. So my question is, because I have yet to do a pairing with the historical, is how much research do you do for the sex scenes in your book? Like, there's certain positions that are expected of women of a certain class, right? And different things are expected in the bedroom. So how much of that is accurate and how much of that is our modern values and expectations in those sex scenes?
We've been doing it in all different ways. There is no such thing as people like, they did that in the 19th century? Yeah.
I have this woman, Lavinia. She goes into her debut, and she's telling, and all the other debut girls are all like nervous, and so she tells them about this artifact that she found that belonged to her grandmother, which exists, which is one of the biggest dildos I have ever seen. And it's huge, and she's like, "Look at this, guys," and they're like, "Oh!" They calm down instantly. Everybody calms down. The fact is, dildos were around, lots of stuff were around, and if you had money, if you were in upper class, you could afford those. Your mother might be going, "Hey, I'm just passing this over, don't say anything." It's in the library. Why don't you go borrow it? It's in the library. They were in the library, so who's using them? Somebody's using them.
Can I find that information in Google Books?
I just want to say, I had to Google something because I had forgotten the name. Look up a book called The School of Whoredom by Petra Maier. It's from the 17th century. It will blow your mind. Get the illustrated version. It will blow your mind.
And Aretino was in tons and tons of libraries in the Renaissance. So, those family libraries, this stuff is filthy.
In a good way.
Yeah. So there's no such thing as a certain, that's our own limited education. But there was a certain way of doing it and a certain way of not doing it. The man might have. Okay, we're only going to do it this way. But there were men who were like, "Okay, baby, turn over,"
There was a fun thing about how aristocratic women were not supposed to get blowjobs. I played on that a few times with the guys like, "Oh my God, if I told her, she would."
Yeah.
But he doesn't tell her, so they both can have fun.
It's fun what we do.
Okay, I will tell you one thing, though. I did research contemporary romance, about sex toys, and found a product. I found the product, okay, people? During research, and it was an... Exactly. It was an oral sex light, okay?
A light?
No, it was an oral sex light. It was actually a headset. Put your headset on. You've got your light.
You are lying.
I am not.
You can find it on Amazon. I'm telling you, I did research. It's not available.
I'm
though.
imagining
Don't go looking
those,
for it thinking you're going to buy it, because it's not available on Amazon. But it is there, still there.
I'm imagining those cave spelunking lights.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And in my book, in the book that's coming out in April, Pretending He's Mine, one of the the heroine says, "Hi ho, hi ho," and does that exact thing. But it's out there.
This is why we rewrote
What's the name of your blog? I think we all need to know that.
It's called Body Bookworms. It's actually a subscription box. So I put romance books and sex toys together.
Oh, nice.
You're a genius.
I love it.
Okay, I'm going to follow the fangirl moment because I never imagined that I could get four of you together in a room. Is this thing on?
Yes.
I just have a question for you, Lisa, and it's you can signal me, you can pull your ear like Carol Burnett, but one character, Tom Severin.
Think you want me to tell you? Well, yeah, he's going to be paired with Cassandra in the last book of the series, and there were some questions, and I mean some very good suggestions about possibly pairing him with Dr. Garrett Gibson because they did have a couple of interactions that they seemed to have some chemistry. But then when I seriously started thinking who would I pair her with, I realized Tom Severin is so cerebral, detached, in control, professional. Now underneath we don't know what he's like, but this is his way of being most of the time, that he was really too much like her because she is very professional, and it means a lot to her not to cry in public, not to be emotional. So I thought she needs a foil who is just all out romantic. You know, if I could choose my fate, I would never be parted from you. I mean, those are the kind of things that Ransom says to her, and whereas Severin just would be he runs cool. You know what I mean? So pairing him with someone like Cassandra, who is gentle, whimsical, beautiful, emotional, in some sort of a forced marriage or marriage of convenience situation, I think would bring out the best in both of them, and there'd be a lot of sparks. The only other person I thought that possibly I could pair Garrett with would be West, but I wanted to save him for Sebastian and Evie's oldest daughter, Phoebe. So I'm writing that book right now.
I went to the end when I got my paperback.
Yes. The first chapter of Devil's Daughter is at the end of Hello Stranger. So thank you.
Petra wants West. You can't give him anybody but Petra. The heroine doesn't name it. See Petra, sorry.
I can say that West has a big part in Hello Stranger, and at one point he's assisting her in surgery unexpectedly, and he keeps talking, and she's like, "If you don't stop talking, I'm going to chloroform you and do this by myself." And he's like, "Sorry, if this was a plague-ridden cow, I would know exactly what was happening." But so yeah, he has a big part.
Are we out of time?
Yes.
I have one. We have an impromptu giveaway. Is it anyone's birthday?
Okay. No cheating, no lying.
No cheating, no lies.
Well, it's our birthday. It is. Right here.
Really?
Yeah.
Right here? We have a present for you.
Yay! We should sing happy birthday to her. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you for being such a great audience. We love you.
You're terrific.